a scion of many worlds. Many of her children thought she was trapped in the past. The less kind thought she had broken and regressed to childhood again. More thought she was just sentimental. It was difficult to tell who was actually the most correct at times. It hurt to look at them, faded, slowly decaying. No amount of preservation, keeping them out of the wind, rain, or direct sunlight could truly save them. It was even hard to remember what color Mr. Slithers was when she first had him. Green. He was green and black. Toys and mementos, little pieces of a lost world, shattered against the stone and wind of Lacrin. She had been so afraid when everything was fire and death. When her mother had shielded her and sent her to an escape pod with Mr. Slithers, she could no longer remember her mother's voice. That sends an uncomfortable shiver from her hood to her rattle. She pushes aside the faces, most of them mere ghosts that blurred into each other, because of course they blur into each other. They're each her children. They bear her face, her mother's face. She shivers and clenches all 6 arms close together. This is the place. This is the only place she can be weak, where she can admit to herself she has no idea what she's doing. She was never ready for this. She never wanted this, but it was hers anyways. She had been alone for so long after the crash. According to everyone else, she had been surviving in the wild for 100 years without anyone. It took her a year to fully learn how to speak again. She had become little more than an animal before meeting someone else after the crash. They called themselves the Grand Midwives, and what she had learned from them was awful and incredible. None of the men had survived. But there were babies anyways. Just like that, she wasn't alone anymore, but something was wrong. Horribly, horribly wrong. They could not shift their form with a shedding. Even worse, each shedding made them larger and larger until they started to wither and rot. She was doing something wrong, something terribly wrong. They faded and died, more akin to animals than herself. Everyone did. She and she alone was ageless. Everyone died and faded and failed, but for some reason, she was left behind. She had thought they were sick for the longest time, but she had learned better. They just couldn't stay young, couldn't stay strong. So she built, tried to find some answer, but she didn't know where to start, didn't know where to go. And time moved faster and faster, faster and faster and faster. Her children's faces started blurring together. The pain of them withering and dying perversely hurt less and less, but it went from red-hot knives of bitter despair to an unending throb of agony that never ceased. Tolerable, but nearly as old as she was, and a pain she wasn't sure she deserved or wanted to be free of. It was an effort of will to notice the lives around her at times, when the sadness took her, when she could feel the weight of it all pressing down on her. Then she could miss entire decades. But she had kept her hope. She was still young. She was still strong. Surely there were others out there, others as long-lived as her. Didn't her family beyond her mother exist somewhere? Wasn't there someone out there that would come looking? Lacrin was found once. Surely it could be found again. It was only reasonable, only rational, only smart. But not many believed it anymore. They had even forged an entire kingdom of people that didn't believe her. That had hurt. It had hurt badly, but after thinking about it, it made sense. Time just vanished for her if she wasn't paying attention. Sure, rescue was coming, but likely none of them would see it. It would be here someday, but when? She would see it. She would live long after even Lacrin itself dying. But her children? The people? How could she guide them if she was so apart from them? "Milady, milady, something has occurred," a voice calls from outside her private shrine. "I will be out in a moment," she replies and turns from her shrine to dress herself. Her greater size and strength, her natural grasp of axiom and unceasing life and youth had caused her children, grandchildren, and their children and grandchildren to see her as a goddess. So instead of her caring for them as she should have, they cared for her instead. They brought her shining metals beaten into the shape of jewelry with opulent stones worked in. They traded with Urthani and Yorgwa to not only gather great swaths of silk but dye them every shade imaginable. Without even trying, she had become their symbol, an undying source of wisdom and comfort, an origin point for all Nagasha of the world, and an object of awe and reverence for those that were adopted into the serpent ways. Rings through the holes in her hood with carved precious stones dangling from them. Bracelets, both close drawn and dangling around her wrists. Rings upon the many fingers and an ornate necklace. Ropes of pearls are draped around her silken clothing, and finally she picks up her veiled crown. She could see through it, but only the most general traits of her face could be perceived. It helped people with imagining her as something more than she was, and it let her actually feel without her thoughts being read from her expression. If people truly knew how uncertain she felt at times, there may very well be a panic. But she had to be brave, had to be strong for them, for the memory of those who are lost, and those yet to be. She leaves the room, not as a girl or a woman, but a pillar of order and reason, a great icon that could be relied upon in times of danger and in times of peace. She was no longer little Izarazan of the White Flow family, but the Snake Empress, the nameless and single unmoving and unmovable pillar of righteousness and wisdom upon a broken and lost world. She leaves the chamber and looks down upon her descendant and worshipper, Aliasa Flowscale, so beautiful, so frail, so full of life, but only for the moment. Like countless others, she too will soon be withering unto her death, her great-granddaughter to the fourth power. Iserazan had been there when she hatched and will be there when she passes, as she tried to be for all her children and their children in turn. Now, what has brought you such concern, my child? She asks the tiny but full-grown Nagasha. Honored ancestress, there is an unexpected tournament in the empire of the unbelievers. An army is there, led by a twisted and strange Urthani. They bear the cloaks of the Star Seekers, but I thought their martial branch was disbanded, Aliasa explains, leading the way to a nearby chamber. Iserazan is forced to move very slowly as her longer tail has her easily keep pace with the smaller Nagasha. Not disbanded, but withered. It hadn't had the warriors to field in the past. I am curious as to what could cause such a change. She muses out loud before thinking a little more. I find it most curious that an Urthani of all people would have the sheer resilience and bloodlust needed to face the Dark Mirror. That test has claimed more lives than some wars. The Dark Mirror, milady? I could hear the importance in that statement. The Dark Mirror is an immensely powerful artifact. It was created to try and form an army of a single person. However, there was a mistake, and it instead traps whomever looks into it. This trap then attempts to murder the victim by using their reflection as the assassin. It was moved to a hidden chamber and was repurposed as a means to test warriors and separate the weak from the wondrous. Oh wow, that poor Urthani. That's probably why she looks so different. Her breasts must have been cut clean off, Aliasa says in a sad tone. Behind the veil, Iserazan smiles. That is what is possibly the most valuable thing her daughters and their daughters bring to this world. A willingness to see it heal and a willingness to care for others. That is what's going to save Lakran. Many of her descendants, if not most, will never see rescue when it comes, but if they can be good to one another, they might not need it. Aliasa hurries into the room of viewing. This is where one of the most astounding axiom constructs on the world exists. The projection and delicate arts around the crystal spheres and the infused water allows the entire world to be seen and heard. Of course, there are some limits. It takes a while to focus into an area the further it is. Should things occur on the other main continent, then it could take minutes to focus in. All right, Aliasa, show me what has you so concerned. Show me this strange Orthani. Isarazon bids her descendant as they come to the edge of the large pool. Every part of it was sacred and solemn. The bowl of the pool was a single gigantic boulder of white stone slowly carved out and marked with axiom-enhancing symbols. It was then filled with water and then had spheres of crystal placed inside. So many spheres that the pool had overflowed many times. It nearly overflowed with the spheres and the water, now so infused with axiom as to be nearly liquid axiom itself, could reflect anything anywhere. Of course, milady. Here it is, Alyassa says, and her tail comes around to lightly poke the water. The ripple it makes leaves behind an image that grows clearer and clearer as the ripples continue. Eventually, all the ripples converge and crash into each other, and the sounds of a cheering crowd emanates from the pool. Isarazon wonders if this is the last time Alyassa will do this with her. It had not been so long from the first time, and her descendants were so very frail. There she is. Look at her, Alyassa says, pointing to the only Orthani to be seen. Alyassa, that Orthani does not move as if she were injured, Isarazon says, even as she tries to piece it together. Her speech is interesting, but the sheer deepness and humming lowness of the voice is distracting. She speaks of camaraderie between nations and peoples. She speaks of sharing knowledge and showing what they have to offer. They speak of healing and building and peace. Wonderful things, but not what one should be speaking of when they're in a gladiatorial arena and at the front of an army. There is something very, very off about her, though, Alyassa says, and Isarazon nods. You are correct. They are definitely unusual. Isarazon confirms even as she thinks hard. She knows this. This is achingly, hauntingly familiar, and she struggles to place it. She has seen this before, but not often, perhaps once or twice in the length of her eternal life, which meant this Orthani holds rare traits, unusual traits, and, before the match can begin, a Metak makes herself clearly visible and jumps onto the Orthani to kiss them deeply. Enormous and friendly, in spite of the knives he had for fingers. That's what Mr. Sever was like. He wasn't her father, but he was a friend of her mother. He was there when she was given Mr. Slithers. A man? Isarazon asks in surprise. Where did he come from? What? Wait, weren't man, or rather men, something that was lost in the downfall? Yes. It's been so long it took me a moment, but I've seen Orthani men before. That was a partial lie. She only ever saw the one. And he was not nearly so large and strong as this one seems to be. But he is a man and is male. Do you remember what I taught you about languages changing and unused portions falling to the wayside? Yes? Why? To speak of, or to a man, it is not she or her, but he and him, Isarazon remarks as she tries to put together the situation. There's clearly excitement in his movement. Then the match begins, and not only does an opposing army emerge, but numerous parts of the field unfold to reveal spinning blades. Remember, this is a war game. We're playing friendly. Keep the casualties low, the Orthani declares, as he draws a sword that is so enormous compared to the women around him that it looks to be well-sized for Isarazon rather than any moth. He holds it over his head with an ease that suggests that it's effectively weightless in his claws. She then watches as him and his army tear through the competition like it were made of wet paper. The traps are quickly assaulted with elements and deactivated. The enemy champions are met by not only the Orthani, but other champions as well, including the Metak, who proves herself to be very much one of the mountain clans from the neighboring continent. They were a useful people, swift and strong, and all too willing to help if it let them prove themselves in battle. There is something stirring to see that Orthani moves so fast and resists so much, flashing his swords and saluting the crowd, shouting advice and encouragement to friend and foe alike for a better and better show. He was laughing, cheering, and generally making what was normally a bloody and brutal sport into something that seemed almost friendly. It should have been a slaughter. The ground should have been covered in blood, but there were bruises at worst. A game of death and doom had been turned all the way around into a contest of skill and integrity. Something was up. How could that even be considered something normal? In a mind-bending display of both skill and restraint, the enemy forces are pushed back by the Orthani's army of Erementa against the far wall until there's no room to even swing their weapons, and the enemy champions find themselves pinned and grappled by their opposites, including the Orthani, who simply pins the forearms of the two Nagasha he had faced. If nothing else, she approves of how he handled fighting with her descendants. Even if those two in question were part of the empire that had dedicated itself to hating her, she loved them still, for she was their mother and it was her duty. "That was fun," the strange Orthani declares loud and strong. "After the tournament, I have some more to show you. We've recovered some techniques that allow a person to breathe life into librariums, not to mention easier ways to make more of them with ease. Perhaps we could speak of such things." An enormous animal roar cuts off his speech. It's one of the monsters made by the less friendly of the learned in that rebellious place. "After the next round, I've got my blood up and—" "Dibs," the Metak interrupts him. "What?" the Orthani asks. "Remember the deal. You get first refusal on fighting people and I get it on monsters. I want to fight monsters," the Metak declares to the roaring approval of the crowds. "Aw, come on. Can't I pitch in?" "Nope. I get to have fun letting out the bloodlust." "Ha ha ha ha." She taunts him and the cheers turn to laughter. "Bloodlust? Iserazan asks. "So very strange for an Orthani to sense such things." She reaches past Aliasa with her tail and allows the rattle to hang over the very center of the pool. She shakes it once and the feeling of power flows. The pool shifts and there's a gasp from the other side, as its viewing is now two ways and it's directly in front of one of her own. "Maria Bellwether, dear granddaughter, how are you?" "Ancestress," the monk states, and Iserazan bids her to rise out of the bow she falls into. "None of that. I'm afraid this is about business and not pleasure, although it is a pleasure to see you in good health." Thank you, Ancestress. How may I serve?" "There is a strange Orthani." "The Martial Master?" Sister Bellwether asks. "I believe so. Unusually large, male and strong?" "You know of males. I lived when we still had men amongst us before Lacron itself. I have seen Orthani men before, but this one is abnormally large and strong. He is a soldier milady, from a people known as the Undaunted. He says they are coming here to offer rescue. Milady, is the long wait over? Has the time come for us to have the stars once more? He has brought miracle after miracle to us and ours, but is it really happening? In my lifetime? Is rescue finally here? I hope so, my child, but I will need to speak to him in person. There is something, milady. I need fetch it first, but I was confronted by the Martial Master. His name is Jasper. Yes, oh sorry. I'm such a mess. But he wanted you to have something if I ever visited you before he got around to speaking with you," Bellwether says as she rushes through the building and quickly to her chambers. She pulls out a communicator, freshly made and thrumming with power. This one is hooked into not only the satellites in orbit above Lacron, but to other communicators as well. In particular, it connects to Jasper's personal device. He wishes to speak with you. "Then why has he not supplicated himself at this holy temple?" Aliasa demands. "He's busy. He's breaking famines, battling monsters and preventing wars, if not outright fighting them himself. He says, I understand that the Undaunted will be here in less than a month. He claims there is much to do before then," Bellwether says, and behind her veil, Iserazan's eyes widen. "I see. Hold out the device so I may retrieve it. Isarazan commands and Bellwether crouches down while holding the communicator up. It then glows as Isarazan shakes her rattle thrice and lifts upwards before cresting through the water and floating over the pool. It then gently swoops to Isarazan's hands and she activates it. It works. It works perfectly, and there's a contact list. Sergeant Jasper is at the top. You have done very well, Maria. I'm proud of you. Thank you, Mother. Continue your studies. You do us all proud. She finishes before allowing the power to drain from the pool and closing the connection. Mother, Alyassa asks in an uncertain tone. I need some time to consider things, Alyassa. Excuse me.